Here we are.
Hey, there we go. We are live and we're talking about a little movie that came out this weekend. Deadpool. There we go. I got the
Oh
poster
yeah,
here.
poster.
Yeah, the Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, Before I start, I want to just introduce everyone on the panel here. From Keeping It Real, we have David Fowley with us. And of course, we have from Jeff York's Characters, Jeff York with us. All right, how you
Well,
guys doing today?
Doing good.
and the establishing shot. That's
The
where
establishing
my
shot.
movie
Yes.
interviews are. Sometimes they have Jeff York characters, but the
Yeah.
characters are slightly different, Mike.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
all
See,
right.
I'm so used to seeing your drawings that
There you go.
I kind of like.
As long as it's not OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Nobody would pay a dime for that.
I don't know. Jeff
Us-
just drawing pictures of like people that people want to see naked.
You could draw nudes on OnlyFans. How's that?
Yeah.
See,
you
that's
can
what I
draw
could do. I could
nudes.
say,
Yeah.
"Hey, whoever you want to see, I will draw that person.
I will
for
draw
you."
them nude. Yeah, a caricature of them nude.
You think she's got a big chest? No, just wait,
Oh boy.
Oh man.
man.
So, I guess we could just start talking about the film because this is sort of like Marvel's. This was sort of like one of their big films that they were going to release. I didn't think that this would be canon because after 20th Century Fox was acquired by Disney, you start to think, oh wait, what are they going to do with Deadpool now? Is it still going to be R rated? Is it still going to? Oh, hang on, once again, I'm fixing the live stream somewhere. I'll just remove that. Yeah, is it going to just be another typical Marvel film? What are they going to do with this? Are they going to make Deadpool PG? And then, of course, the information in the movie came out. You find out it was going to be rated R, and it was going to have Wolverine with it, and it started to draw some interest. And I think the final film was pretty fun. I was surprised by how much I liked it. The movie it kind of does the best things that a Marvel film does with this multiverse stuff, which is they introduce all these new characters and cameos, but they're not just there as gimmicks. Mostly, there's still a little gimmicky, but it introduces those, and it also is a film that, despite like all its like humor and fourth wall breaking stuff, it does have a little bit of heart to it. Deadpool wants to join the X-Men so he can actually matter and he's not just a stupid assassin.
Or
And
Avengers. Yeah.
yeah, or the Avengers. He could
Yeah.
be the X-Men or the Avengers. And you have Wolverine who made a mistake in the past and can't let go of it. So he's an alcoholic mess. I thought sort of the writing with Wolverine in the movie was a little repetitious because when you see Logan, it's sort of like the same thing. Something happened in Logan's past, although Logan didn't do anything. Like Professor X had a seizure and a bunch of people died, and he couldn't stop him from having it happen. But his regenerative powers allowed him to survive the incident. But still, it's like that incident from the past haunted him. And in this film, there's an incident from the past, which I'll just throw this up because this is a very spoiler heavy
Oh
movie.
yeah. Yeah.
There's an incident from the past that uh, makes Wolverine, aka Logan, not be able to push forward and be just an absolute mess of a human being. So it felt like they were just copying and pasting what they did in Logan, but it was still effective for the film. And I like how the film still had a little bit of soul to it, where mostly it's kind of just like this parade of the studio poking fun at itself. But what did you guys think of the movie?
I mean, I know this movie's being touted as an MCU movie,
Yeah.
but I see it more. I mean, the only MCU part of it truly is the Loki's time variance. What is it called?
Time
The
travel authority,
time TVA, the
the time variance authority.
variance. Yes, thank you. Time
yeah.
variance authority.
Yes.
And that's. I mean, yes, there's some cameos here, like a really brief cameo of like Hulk and we see some footage of past MCU movies, but this really, to me, is a farewell to Fox Marvel stuff. Okay, so you have some X-Men, some Fantastic Four. What that is the X-Men and Fantastic Four stuff that Fox did of Marvel. Now, as we know, Sony still owns Spider-Man, so all we got from Spider-Man in this movie was Deadpool going, in the car. So I know it's being touted as an MCU movie, but I didn't quite feel it, which is fine with me. Yes, you see the Marvel Studios logo and everything, and yes, Kevin Feige co-produced it with Lauren Donner, who basically headlined all of those other Fox Marvel movies. But yeah, I mean, as far as there's a lot of I wouldn't say misdirections, but I would say subversions here of our expectations, which is cool. If I would say that this is a movie that you can enjoy in and of itself. If you that is, if you like hard R, bloody, profane, absurd, insane humor and violence, sure. But it does help to have watch at least one season of Loki to get an idea of what's what. Because a lot of the movie takes place in the Void, which the Void seemed to be a lot of different things in Loki. Here it just seems like to be a dumping ground of past Marvel Fox characters, like where they went to die. It's like this is where this person is, and I didn't mind that because it's kind of a fun little meta nod to farewell to the past in a way. I would say that this wouldn't be a jumping on point for any MCU movie that's coming in the future. It's more of like a pause and a good time, before we get into Captain America Brave New World and everything else, next February. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody could not have a good time with the chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. I mean, they're great together. They just co-hosted Jimmy Fallon's show last night, and it was pretty funny. I mean, they're just good together. I mean, you could tell, and I understand why Jackman came back. Because it's like he saw Deadpool and he's like, I want a part of that. I think he's always said that like he's always wanted to like be in an Avengers movie as Wolverine and like fighting the Hulk and stuff, and that like he just could never get that to happen because of Fox and Marvel, and Disney, and blah blah blah. But now, who knows? And I could even see with this movie's success, I could see them maybe trying to corral Jackman back in. I mean, the guy's 55 and he's just like, I don't know how he does it. Well, I mean, I know how he does it. He eats like 6,000 calories a day and, works out, all that stuff. But man, it's just, that takes a toll. So as far as the movie, I mean, I had a good time with it. It was fun. I think it's one of those movies, like the more you think about it, the more you're like, but I had a good time. It was a blast. At the same time, I could totally understand how some people would be like, what the heck is this? But to me, kind of like the comic book geek in me was just like, this is hilarious and fun and really like getting the character. Everybody after Logan, everybody was like, yes, finally the R-rated, just brutal Wolverine movie that we all wanted. But we also wanted like, kind of like that's definitely a darker version of what could happen in the future with Logan. But we also wanted like, some hybrid of comic book accurate and animated series accurate of the depiction of these characters. And I think that's what we got here. Still at the same time, still staying loyal to the previous Deadpool movies in tone and, visuals and stuff. especially this insane opening. But yeah, I mean, I had a good time with it.
Great. But what did Jeff? What did you think?
Well, it's interesting. I agree with most of what you've said, David, and I agree with what you mostly said too, Mike. I will share this. I think unwittingly they have maybe reached a point now with these comic book movies where they don't have to really be all that connected, all that consistent, and sort of follow their own logic of whatever the universal laws are that they've created, because they break them all the time.
Mhm.
And it's funny that this is opening this weekend. Haven't seen it this last week at the critic screening, but last weekend I watched all 10 episodes of the new Batman Gotham.
Oh wow,
Gotham.
advanced.
Gotham.
In advance.
The show. I think that opens either
August
drops on
1st,
Amazon. Yeah, I was going to
2nd.
say not this weekend, but maybe the following weekend for
Looking forward to
Amazon.
that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that takes it's a Batman Cape Crusader, and that takes a lot of the lore of Batman, but they also do different things with it. They do some reinvention of it. For example, Barbara Gordon is the city's sort of public defender. So you've got Jim Gordon, her dad, on one side as the head cop, and then she's this public defender. She doesn't become Batgirl in this yet. In fact, a lot of the major characters in the Batman world, villains anyway, don't show up, which is kind of refreshing. It's a little bit more noir. It's a little bit more about the police,
Crime.
Detective Montoya, and the crime thing. It has a Chinatown feel, believe it or not, to some of it.
Cool.
And I'm watching that thinking, good. I mean, we've seen a lot of different versions of Batman, and I like it when they're tweaking it a little bit. And, they have a very realistic sort of Harvey Two-Face kind of, after the acid hits his face, it becomes a little bit more realistic and not quite the blue thing that they did back in the Batman animated series in their land, which was fantastic.
Well, that was fine as long as we don't go Tommy Lee Jones thing.
Yeah, they don't. But I mean, there's room. But it's interesting, David, isn't it? There's room for the Batman animated series, which is highly stylized, kind of a 40s thing. The crazy, almost TV Batman that Joel Schumacher unfortunately did when he got his hands on it and allowed Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey to both go so far over the top that neither of them were watchable in Batman and Robin. Or you have the straighter, more serious kind of minded Christopher Nolan films, and they all are fine on certain levels, and same, I think, here. Like, I was really kind of upset when I first heard that Hugh Jackman was going to do this, because it's like, no, you went out on such a high note with Logan, and it was serious, and it was, well, it's popularity, it's money, it's his buddy Ryan Reynolds. He's very good at comedy, and unfortunately, it seems outside of Broadway, Hugh Jackman doesn't do a lot of comedy or sort of lighter material. He tends to be in some darker material things, which is very good. He was fantastic in Prisoners. But I think it all kind of works. It all kind of is acceptable. My question now is, if this is what you're setting out to do you do it well? And I think this one does it well. I was impressed by the fact that it did not sort of just completely abandon the Logan story, that it had some sort of real stakes in the sense of both of these guys feel shame. And they kind of feel rejected and disposed of, and they are looking to sort of matter. And I mean, those are low world stakes versus you must save the universe or you must save the world from the Age of Ultron or stuff. But I kind of like that. And I thought it was very well done, very witty. It actually kind of got me a little bit in the heart, as you said, Mike. It had a little bit more sentimentality than I was expecting, and I think they played that very well, and it worked well. And then, the laughs are good too. Here's one thing I thought at the end of it, and this is where I am maybe being too convinced by all this, and I'm sort of following the line from the corporate America kind of, or at least movie studio thing is, at the end of this, I thought, what, these two could come back as Thelma and Louise, Butch and Sundance, whatever you want to call them, and throw them into any adventure where you want to take them. And it's not going to matter a hill of crap to whatever else they're doing, because these guys are going to be funny as the duo. I think they could do the same. In fact, I would suggest writing a movie where they're one duo, and then you've got Haley Steinfeld and Florence Pugh as the other duo. Because I think that bitchy banter between them is funny.
Great,
same here. They're almost kind of like old married couple carping at each other. And, it reminded me of the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid a lot. So that to me was in some respects the biggest revelation here, is that maybe these two could just do their own thing and go on and whatever they're doing over here, whatever Batman wants to do over here at Superman, I think it's almost like anything goes, the Cole Porter song these days. And I'm not sure that we have to necessarily say, no, we're doing this universe phase for MCU and that's it. And everybody will stick with that. I'm not sure that's true anymore.
Well, in the comics, like if you had,
yeah,
like some of the X-Men comics they could have some standalone stories, and they could also have long-running, stints of 4 to 6 issues, and they could also impact other X-Men books. Same thing can be said for Avengers and their proper standalone titles like Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, and all that. Sometimes they could interact with the Avengers books, sometimes not. And we're not there yet in Marvel Studios, but if gradually this is introducing, let's say, the layman to mutants in the Marvel Studios MCU. Okay, so down the road when they introduce X-Men proper, maybe you could do just. I guess what I'm saying is all these. And I think this is what you're saying, is all these MCU movies, they don't all have to interconnect. You could.
And I think it's asking too much of the audience anyhow.
Right.
They don't want to see them all, and then they become boring. Like, oh my god! I mean, weren't you kind of disappointed when you first heard? Oh my god, they're going to the TVA again. Like, how many multiverses? And are we going to get the villain that will not be named, or whatever they call him in the thing, and all that stuff? It's like, no, they're just kind of doing their own thing with it, and they bring Nova into it, and she's funny and kind of sad in her way too, and all this stuff. I don't know. To your point though, David and Mike, I know you're a comic book guy too, but you go to the comic book stand and there's 6 Spider-Man titles, or at least last time I was in there, and they're different ones. They're all Spider-Man, but they're different versions of his story. So we've got. I mean, my God, we've got the Tom Holland version, then we've got the Spider-Verse animated stuff, which are 2 very different versions of it, and some, and seems to be working for everybody. So maybe my advice to Kevin Feige, is it Feige or Feige?
Feige.
I think it's Feige.
Feige would be, stop trying to make it all connect.
Yeah, you don't have to.
We're all fractured, and you did that so well when you built up to Infinity Game and Endgame. Those were great, and all hands on deck, and everybody sort of crisscrossed and all that. Nice. And you're not going to top it. So do one-offs, do more. Like, these duos are good over here. I've been saying for years, and I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm, been saying this and they should listen to me. They don't, damn it. But do you remember what was about 7 years ago? They did a Super Bowl commercial. I think it was only 1 minute long, with Ant-Man stealing Hulk's Coke.
Yeah.
And then Hulk goes around and answers. I thought, I want to see that as a movie. I want to see that with size ratio, or just. And I'm like, who else can you put together?
Or honestly, they could do what Pixar used to do and show these shorts before their movies. It's like Ant-Man Hulk short. Okay, now we're going to go into the main movie. That'd be great. And they don't have to connect at all.
I agree with you. And do something, mix it up some, because the thing is, the continuity is the beloved characters, just as the comic book characters have been there for over 100 years, or how many decades they've been in there. I think if you are trying to make something like it's a big TV series, like you have to watch every episode, otherwise you won't know what's going on. This isn't Young and the Restless. This is beloved characters the people who grew up on the comics loving them know that there are 6 different Spider-Man titles every month. Go for it.
Yeah. No, that's the main thing with this is I don't know if this is connected to the other films or not. Like, are they going to try to connect the cameos to the X-Men when they introduce them, or is this more just fan service?
I honestly think this is a lot like Doctor Strange 2 when we saw the what do you call it? The
when you saw the
Illuminati.
The Illuminati, yeah.
With Jim Krasinski as Reed Richards. You'll never see him again. And Haley Atwell as the Captain of Britain, or whatever her name is.
Captain Carter.
Yeah, Captain Carter. You'll never see her again except in animated. And I think here, spoilers are on. I mean, you see Wesley Snipes. What?
Yeah,
Wesley Snipes is back as Blade. Jennifer Garner as Elektra,
Mhm.
Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Because he was supposed to do Gambit, and then
I
it didn't
know.
happen.
Yeah.
I know, but
Which
I'm
is
sorry.
hilarious.
It's hilarious, and there's no point at all in this movie. And I know it was not intentional, but there's no point at all in this movie where I took him seriously at all.
Yeah.
And
As
it was
Gambit?
just
Yeah.
and it was
It
just
seemed like he was slapping on the Cajun accent. Like
and Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is in on it with us. We're like, I can't understand a word you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
what is that? I don't know what you're saying. And so basically, this team in the void becomes, Sad Sack Wolverine, Deadpool Prime, and then you have these other three characters: Gambit, Blade, Elektra. I'm not missing anybody, am I? No.
I think so.
And it's it's just like I almost feel like the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, wow, I'm really curious as to how they brought Wesley Snipes back. I'm really curious because I mean he became towards the end like really challenging to work with.
Oh yeah, he's been a notorious prick.
Yeah.
And he's like even on his Twitter now, he's been making jokes about how the new Blade
is
having production problems. Yeah. And he's just going on there just gloating about it. So I was like surprised to see him.
I would have really liked a moment like if how in Doctor Strange 2 when they were really tripping through all these different worlds and crazy, like insane, like Salvador Dali type universes and everything.
Yeah.
Like it would have been hilarious if they portaled into like an animated version.
Yes.
I
was surprised that they didn't do an animated version and reference the X-Men animated series because it's so popular, especially when he was, channeling and going through all those different different versions of Wolverine. Why not do that?
That would have been hilarious.
It was a missed opportunity, maybe the timing or something, but no, you're right. And what it's funny too is it almost plays like a Mad Magazine parody, where you're having the characters comment on it, or at least, of course, Ryan Reynolds does with his motor mouth.
That's a good comparison.
And you bring in bits and pieces of all the stuff that Kevin Feige's like, can you do a little of that? That would be great if you could, because we're still trying to sell all that shit. But then, it kind of is its own animal. And speaking of animal, that dog, my God.
That
tongue. It was voted ugliest dog in Britain.
In the UK. Mary.
They had him on the red carpet too.
Yeah. Well, and they had to put all kinds of stuff on Kimmel last night. He said what got him to really give him the licking was salmon paste. And I think, didn't Reynolds say he had to put it in his mouth to get him to really like go for his mouth? Yeah. I give Ryan Reynolds credit for that because they showed one of the takes of it, and he lasted about 6-7 seconds keeping a straight face, and then he broke down because it's got to be hilarious.
That's the epitome of a gag reel.
I
mean that stuff is fun. It's funny. Did any of you guys feel like some of the funny and some of the meta stuff was a little bit too repetitive? I'm not saying I did. I'm just wondering.
No, I felt like I said earlier, Logan's arc was kind of repetitive. Like, something bad happened in your past and you can't get over it. Well, that happened before. We're doing that again. Okay.
But I mean, these are all tragic heroes. I mean, that's how Wade became Deadpool. Is he got kidnapped and tested on and became this freak.
Yeah.
I think to your point or your question, David, is when it's I love the fact that they brought Jennifer Garner back. She plays it straight. It's almost like she's playing the real character. I mean, and she's not in on the joke per se, which I think is kind of neat. And I think the way they set up Casanova and sort of her story and she's the the queen of the misfit toys or whatever works. But the one thing I think that it's dangerous about some of these kind of things, and they get close to it, but I don't think they step over the line, or at least not too much here, is you have a very bad sort of possibility of making everything else that happened before it kind of messy or thought badly of. I'll give you 2 examples. I love Godfather and Godfather 2. They're amazing movies. Every time I watch them now, I think I wish they'd never done that goddamn third one because it's terrible. And I mean, you can sort of say, no, there's just Godfather 1 and 2, but no, there isn't. We have to see Michael, and he falls off the park bench at the end, like Artie Johnson and laughing. And we don't even need to see the rest of his story because he's not redeemable after he kills Fredo and sits by the Lake Tahoe alone with no one left to conquer.
That felt like his entire arc.
Exactly. And I don't like the one thing I didn't like here was seeing the little girl from Logan back, and she's now comely teenager, and she's still talking. It's like, no, I liked her helping him die, and that left it there. I wish they didn't do that. Bringing back the failed people from Fantastic Four, that was the funniest bit.
That was
Chris Evans. You're thinking, oh my God, he's
you
Captain.
Think it's going to be
we're all
Steve
here,
Rogers.
and then he's like, flame on, and he's like, we all forget. Yeah, well, we
and
don't
his
all forget.
Post-credit scene is great too.
He was.
I would love
Johnny before.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they called Chris Evans and said, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. This is what we're going to do. Are you in on it?" I mean, I would have been like, "Yes, sure, let's do it." Yeah. It's great. I mean, Daphne Keane, I really like her. I like seeing her back as Laura and X-23. I always wondered. I'm like, would they ever do anything more with her? I mean, she's such a great talent. I like the idea of, and it sure could have been extrapolated on a little bit more, but I like the idea of her telling, not her Logan, how much a Logan impacted her life.
Right.
And I mean, that idea, I mean, it actually, when I was sitting there, it actually made me think, I'm like, man, what if there was another version of me out there somewhere who had an impact on somebody's life, and that person talked to me like,
still had your dog.
Hey, you can,
that kind of stuff.
You matter. You can do better. You can, and that's, I mean, I think a lot of it's weird to say that some of these character moments in this movie of all movies can be kind of relatable because we all wonder, we all have imposter syndrome. We all have guilt and regrets about something, and we all think like, of course, am I gonna, I'm no good, or I don't.
Did I matter? I mean, that's the universal stake here that I think they shrewdly played into, is everybody can relate to. Do I matter? Yeah. Did I ever matter? What effect do I have?
Yeah, and the thing is, what I liked too about this is the whole crux of this movie is, I only have 9 friends, and they make my world. I need to get together with this 200-year-old curmudgeon and make things happen so these 9 people can still live. I mean, it's great because he realizes that these 9 people matter to me, even though I question whether I matter at all. I think in the long run, I mean, he realizes like, well, if they matter to me, why wouldn't I matter to them? Mm-hmm. I mean, and sometimes we forget, we have friends and all that, but we think, our own insecurities and our own whatever, we trip out, and we think, oh, well, you lose the fact that you matter to people. And, and I think that this movie, underneath all its blood and vivisections and whatever, and profanity, I mean, it is telling us that, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of the heart of the movie that I appreciated, is that the movie Wolverine doesn't show up until about like 20 minutes in, because it's actually taking its time building up Deadpool and his relationship with his friends and his existential
working as a car salesman.
Being as a car salesman, trying to live a normal life when it's not working out. Yeah. Like he's doing all that, and it's like you're actually building the character, and you're actually talking about him rather than just having him make jokes and kill people all the time. So I appreciated how it was building him up a little bit, and then of course when Wolverine comes in the movie, you get some backstory to him. The film does a good job dealing with their sort of issues. Wolverine's trying to figure out, does he matter, himself? And of course, he does a heroic act at the end of the film that, sort of redeems him. But at the end of the film, he isn't like a changed man. he's kind of the same person. Deadpool says, "Am I going to see you again?" He goes, "Probably not." You kind of have the feeling
Well,
he's probably going to go off to the bar again.
well, Mike, that's also very meta too, because
Yeah.
it's Ryan Reynolds saying to Hugh Jackman, "Am I going to see you again?" And he's probably he's I think he wants to say to Ryan and the audience, "You're probably not going to see me again as Wolverine. This is the
Yeah.
last time I'm going to do this."
Yeah.
Wink, 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 wink. 'Cause
Yeah.
he said that before too. So it's almost like a double-edged sword kind of thing, you know, or a double meaning.
One thing that they do very deftly with this, and it's surprising in some respects, is we've now been through these kind of things a lot, and we've seen the surprise cameos, or John Krasinski as Reed and stuff like that, and they don't make more of it than they need to, and like they
Sure.
don't have everybody in on the joke. Like, no, the joke is really Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Everybody else is playing a little more straight, and I appreciate that, because if it becomes, to your point, David, or too meta, then it just becomes we're just watching sort of
then it's like a
very
Zucker
expensive
Abrams.
prank.
Then it's like a Zucker Abrams movie, which nothing wrong with that, but we don't want to watch this movie and then while we're watching it, all of a sudden think, "Wow, this is turning into this kind of movie."
It reminded me a little bit, and I dare say this is going to be a weird comparison, but the Void has a certain flavor of the Misfit toys. Like, this is where all the people who weren't wanted in the MC universe, whether it's part of the actual world of MCU or the film world or whatever, these are the failures. And I have to say, when Cassandra Nova introduces herself by saying, "I'm Charles Xavier's twin," they didn't even give me a chance. I was banished here as a child. And, whether that's because she's a woman or because we don't need her, or we've got other, the male character, blah, 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 blah. It's like, suddenly it's like, okay, that's a little heavy. That's a little sad here. And I think what it does is, again, sort of the Larry Hagman school of Dallas villainy that they asked him one time. They said, "Why are you so successful as J.R. Ewing?" And he goes, "Because J.R., in his mind, in his play, is the hero. I play him as the hero. I'm
Magneto.
Playing him as the guy who's doing well." But even Magneto does some terrible things, and he knows they're terrible.
Sure.
I mean, Michael Fassbender enjoyed, killing those Nazis and doing stuff, and there's a little too much relish in that. Ewing is, JR was trying to hold up the family thing versus those evil Barnes people were the villains. I love the fact that they give it a little bit of that weight here too. I'm not saying that I was feeling particularly sympathetic for Cassandra, but it's better than just, "I'm evil and I'm snarling and twirling my mustache." I hate those kind of villains when they put them in and where they're just pure evil. No, there's no such thing as pure evil. I can tell you why Charles Manson ended up the way Charles Manson did. And as awful a person as he was, and I think he's one of the most despicable people that has been in the planet for the last 100 years, there is a sadness to his backstory that made him the way he was. And I think they give points here for not only doing all the crazy stuff, the profanity, the violence over the top, the blood spurting, the gonzo nastiness and sort of perversity, if you will, to some of the suggestions. And then they turn on and do a little bit of that. It's like, that's pretty surprising. And I think Ryan Reynolds at the end of the day is probably saying, like, we're doing so much funny stuff. They expect that. They'll never expect we're going to rip their heart out as an emotional thing. Sure, as a violent thing, but and then he does it, and you kind of go, wow, that worked actually pretty nice.
Yeah, the movie's sort of a smorgasbord of styles. The film, like, you can't consider it canon because it's a satire of the genre that it's doing. It is constantly, like, there's some great jokes in the beginning about how Disney acquired Fox.
Yes.
And and why the characters aren't gonna work in this sort of thing, blah 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 blah. But it's like the movie mixes styles so well and so seamlessly because it's juggling a lot. It has not only the main plot line of Deadpool trying to find Wolverine, but you got Deadpool, you got Wolverine, you have all these cameos. And how do you make them all go in the film where it doesn't seem like they're just shoving characters in there for the sake of shoving characters in there and appealing to fan service? And I mean, I will say partially, yeah, it is just fan service, but it's fan service done right. Where this is a film that's making fun of the genre that it's doing, so you can kind of have fun with it a little bit. You can have Wolverine put his mask on when he goes on for a killing spree. You can have, a multitude of Deadpools appear everywhere, and that's the thing that works with this because it's making fun of its genre. It can do so many more things with the film that you wouldn't expect. That is funny, and it's something you can't do with a lot of characters. You can't have, because if every movie was like Ferris Bueller and they're just breaking the fourth wall, then it's going to get pretty repetitive.
Oh yeah.
But it's funny for its own setup internal logic. It stays pretty close to that.
Yeah.
It sets up why everybody is in the void, because it would not be Chris Evans as Captain America. That was a success.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks of the Fantastic Four as something noble or wonderful or a very memorable thing. In fact, that was the first complaint that they had about when they cast Chris Evans as Captain America. People couldn't get past him as Johnny because he was such the smart aleck. And then, Chris Evans turned out to be a much better actor than maybe people thought. Although I would say he was the best thing in those two Fantastic Four movies.
Sure. Yeah.
I love the fact that, for example, they don't make it too much. Like, even when they introduce Deadpool, Lady Deadpool, and she's walking in slow motion, I kept thinking they're going to take her thing off, and who's it going to be? Who's going to be? And there was rumors that it was going to be Taylor Swift or somebody else. And it's like, well, we don't have to see her just to be able to say, oh my God, it's Blake Lively.
Yeah.
It's Blake Lively because, of course, it's Blake Lively.
Yeah, exactly.
You can sort of tell from the way she walks, if you know her work pretty well. And then they even manage to list it at the end. But those are little things where they show some discretion. They show some smarts about how they do it. And it's not all just nudge in the ribs.
I didn't notice until I checked IMDb, and it sucks that IMDb even shows who's actually all in this movie. But Matthew McConaughey plays Cowboy Deadpool.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. And they show Blake Lively, of course. And the Wolverine variants were pretty funny,
especially the short one.
Yeah,
because that was the big complaint when they first cast Hugh Jackman. Was like, Wolverine's supposed to be 5'4", and then you want the short Wolverine, here he is.
If we're gonna show Henry Cavill as Calverine, which was a great bit,
Very
you
funny.
might as well have Danny DeVito as a Wolverine too, because there was always that too, right?
Did anybody else think that Mr. Paradox, Matthew McFadden, was almost channeling Richard E. Grant?
Kind of.
I thought it was a very Richard E. Grant performance in a way. I mean, even right down to the sort of breathless, because he's played that role many times. In fact, you almost wonder, we should get Richard Grant. No, he played the original Loki, and he was kind of playing that same character in what was the Jason Segel miniseries?
Shrinking?
No, it was Postcards from Tomorrow.
Jason Segel.
I'm blanking on that. He was very good in it, and it was. But anyway, I'll look it up. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of special cameos in this that they didn't quite embrace as much as we thought they were going to.
That's what I mean by this.
I'm sorry, Dispatches from Elsewhere, not Postcards from Elsewhere.
Okay.
Dispatches from Elsewhere, which is a very underrated miniseries.
That's what I mean when this is more of a farewell to Fox Marvel, and you see that in the whole end credits montage.
I was about to say, you have the whole end credits where it's just home video footage,
which Fantastic Four and X-Men movies. Because there's a lot of cameos, but there's no cameos of MCU familiar characters. There's mentions of Spider-Man. There's mentions of Doctor Strange. There's a brief, Hulk, and of course we know that's CGI, so whatever. But there's a mention of Thor and everything. But none of those actors are in this movie. The actors who are cameos in this movie are all from past Fox Marvel movies.
Right.
And that's fine. But that's what I mean is like, okay, can we really consider this an MCU movie? It's almost like an MCU on the fence movie. It's like we're halfway in. And that's fun. It's fine, but it's just funny that it's like Wolverine's finally in the MCU. I'm like, is he? I mean, you know, it's like,
Yeah, we still don't know about that. I mean, that's because this is a comedy on everything,
Yeah.
so you can't take it seriously as a canon film.
right.
But it has the thing I like that it did with the cameos was it didn't feel like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where you just had the Illuminati, you introduce them, and then you murder them
Kill 'em off.
immediately. Yeah, at least here they stuck around and they did something. They helped defeat the bad guy, and they worked as a team.
Right.
And yeah, and it's funny because I never considered Blade one of the failures because
No.
Blade.
Yeah, those are
1 and
both pretty
2,
successous movies with him.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
But Blade 3
credit to
was a
Wesley
failure.
Snipes, it was his failure. maybe more
Blade
than
3
me.
had Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
did,
That's right.
But yeah, I
You
mean,
probably got him just for that.
Electra kind of bombed. It wasn't the worst movie ever, but it
Right.
bombed.
But I think what it was
yeah.
recognizing is that we think, oh, it's all this money machine and it's all these successes. Like,
Yeah.
they still haven't gotten the Fantastic Four right. There's
Nope.
always questions about that, and they're doing
Yeah.
it again. Third time, we'll
A
see
year
if that's
from
the
now,
charm
we'll
or
see.
not. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's what I think is interesting, because from now on we have Captain America Brave New World and then Fantastic
Yeah.
Four. And
Yeah.
and really Captain America Brave New World is the only one that's really staying in the MCU that we're familiar with.
Right. Right.
You know, Fantastic Four is going to be either in some kind of alternate 1960s retro universe or in the 60s that we're familiar with in the past. I'm not sure yet. So, you know, it's interesting.
The one thing that I think Kevin Feige and maybe to some degree Disney as the parent company need to get over is that they want to make everything live action. And I'm wondering if maybe one of the successful things they could do with, say, maybe the Fantastic Four franchise is what if they did that animated? Because to me, one of the things that I think is very difficult to turn into live without looking ludicrous is The Thing.
Yes.
Because somehow that size, or he either looks fake, like he's all CGI, or it's a bad rubber costume that doesn't look like it's heavy at all. And I feel that if they did it as adult animation, you know, tried to make it look edgy and maybe a different look to it, they could succeed. Look at, Invincible and what the, Bruce Timm folks have been doing forever and a day with the success of all the Batman stuff. Who says it always has to be live action? Of course, Disney, you know, they're obsessed with now turning every animated classic into a live action. It's like, Disney, you have more money than God. You own everything. Come up with some new stuff. And it's extraordinary too, because if it wasn't for Pixar, I don't know if they'd ever be inclined to even want to do new stuff. It's like, why are you not developing? There's so many. I mean, do you realize that every year there are like books that come out, like the 100 best short stories for kids, the 100 best short stories that, and like, those are things that movie producers could be, and Disney could be culling from, and they don't. It's like, turn those into stuff. Same with Broadway musicals. The fact that Broadway feels the need to just recreate movies so you're laughing at the lines from the movies because they've transported on stage. It's there's better stories out there, and I think Kevin Feige and Marvel look at, and the only proof you need is look at what Sony did with Spider-Man.
Yeah,
you've got the Tom Holland stuff, and the animated stuff is its own animal, and it works well. You tried Fantastic Four on television, didn't work. It's now two big failures on the film, and the second one looked good. I mean, it was well shot. It wasn't cheaped out like the first one with Chris Evans, but it doesn't work. It's too hard to make the Thing look, and the rubbery thing looks sort of ludicrous.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one quick story, and it's one of those things that I think Stephen King learned a hard lesson, and maybe you've heard it. But when they were doing The Shining, he was so mad for a number of reasons that Stanley Kubrick changed The Shining. But one of the most famous passages in the book is when Danny is chased by the shrubbery that's shaped like animals. And it was based on the shrubbery trees that are trimmed to look like animals down at Disney World.
Sure.
And when he's running,
topiary.
Yeah, he turns around and they're closer to him. And when he's running like this and then turns around, they're close to him. Well, you can't make that look right. And Stanley Kubrick said, that's why I'm doing the maze. And Stephen King was like, it's the best scene in the movie, in the book. You got to do it in the movie, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, some things aren't cinematic.
Well, that's
this big Thing guy who's supposed to have the weight of 10 tons and ability to jump around and stop semis and all this stuff. And then you're going to put him in a room with somebody and have him converse like he's just a regular Joe. Your mind's eye buys it when you see it on the drawn page, but when you actually have to physicalize it, it's ludicrous.
It's tough. there was a part of me at times where I thought, let's talk about Wolverine's mask, because Deadpool's mask works
Yeah.
in the same way that Tom Holland's Spider-Man mask works.
They actually kind of the eyes move a little bit.
The eyes kind of move, and there's some kind of, you get the personality coming out of it, and maybe it's because, and it's the same thing at the beginning of the first Thor movie. When you think of Marvel Thor, comic book accurate Thor, you think of the helmet with the wings, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Well,
Sure.
that just doesn't look really good in
Exactly.
live action.
Yeah.
So they had it in a brief first scene in
right.
Kenneth Branagh's movie, and then that's it. We don't see it anymore. Of course, we
Right.
saw it in this movie. It was laying
Wasn't-
around in the void.
Wasn't that
but-
the first line in the X-Men
Yeah.
when they
Yeah,
had the
yeah.
black leather suit?
Sure.
And it goes like,
What
"What
do you
did you
expect me
what
to
do you
wear,
expect?
yellow
Yellow
spandex?"
spandex.
Yellow
Yeah,
spandex.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
and of course they hit him back now with the TV, with the
Right.
cartoon show. And they said,
Yeah.
"What, you want black leather?"
well, see, at the time, that was
That's right.
that was Grant Morrison's run on X-Men. All of them have this. The whole team had the same kind of black leather costume. It
Right.
was current with what was in the comics at the time, and that's fine. But I looking at, like, in the last, like, 15-20 minutes, we see Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, put on the mask, and it's a geek out moment, sure, and everything,
Mhm.
but it just looks like, I understand seeing, like, in comics,
Mhm.
without seeing the iris and the eyes and the
Mhm.
pupils and everything, and
Right.
it's just white. It's just whites, right? Same thing with
Yep.
the live action Deadpool. That's fine. That works because it's
And
it's
the
kind of
Batman animated character
and
doesn't
it's-
have eyes
sure.
either. It's just the
Mhm.
but
whites.
every live action Batman, you could see his eyes,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
and I don't know. I almost would have preferred it like, it would have been a fun joke if he put his mask on and you could see his eyes, and it's like, well, how come in your, Ryan Reynolds would be
Yeah.
like, how come your mask doesn't have the whites? What?
Yeah.
What? And he's
Something's
like,
off. Like, actually
yeah,
Yeah.
deconstruct it. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it would
yeah,
have been
yeah.
funny.
Doesn't work without. And then then they could comment on, like, I always thought it was funny in the Batman movies that clearly he's got the black
He's got the
makeup
black, like
around
a
his
football
eyes.
player.
But then when he
Yeah.
rips off his mask in the Batman
Yeah.
Returns with Catwoman, suddenly
Yeah.
it's gone. It's
Yeah.
like,
And it was
because it
in
wouldn't
the
look good
next
if you could
shot,
see the
too.
hue, the regular colored pink flesh or
Right.
beige flesh underneath.
Right.
That doesn't quite work.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me just like, some of this stuff works better on the page, and that's why we've
Right.
never seen Hugh Jackman wear the iconic mask, because it looks a little dopey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but-
it looks
but I-
silly.
But I didn't mind it, because, well, here we waited this long. Why not put it on? It's fine.
Yeah, and they're having fun
Yeah.
with it, which,
Sure.
but if you were trying to be serious and you did that, you go like, we have to
Yeah.
kill that. We can't do that.
And
Yeah.
what would be the intention of the mask? Like, what does it do? All he says is he just wears it when he wants to kill people. It's like, okay, but you can kill people without the mask too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what tactical advantage does it give
It's-
you?
It's hard because I know this isn't. It's a Wolverine. It's a Logan. But
Yeah.
we've seen him go berserk without the mask. We've seen him, get
Right.
bloodthirsty without the mask, and that's fine. But that's really like one of those. The fans have waited forever for this.
Mhm.
Let's give it to them, and whatever. That's fine.
In this
I've always been more of a golden brown suit guy more than the yellow and blue, but
Yeah.
whatever.
which they do show like very briefly, like early on in the film. They show him in like in a gold brown suit.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
There's so much fan service in it, but of course, since this movie doesn't take itself seriously, I don't mind it so much.
Yeah.
Where in
Mhm.
most other films, I would be like, okay, they're way overdoing it.
Yeah.
Right.
They have to they have Wesley Snipes say some motherfuckers are still trying to ice skate uphill in the movie. Like, did we need that? No, but I loved it.
I almost
But
think
it's-
like
but
he
it's-
said
but-
yes, just so he could say that line.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I think you have to sometimes take a really hard look at adaptation, because I think adapting a play, a musical, a book, whatever it is, it's tricky.
Mhm.
When I read that they were doing the Great Gatsby musical, and it didn't get any Tony nominations except I think for set direction, maybe costumes. Well, I got a couple, but it wasn't like a big hit. I think it was a modest hit. But my first thought was, that's a very tricky book to do as a musical, because
Yeah.
musicals are about people breaking into song, sort of almost expressing themselves extravagantly. And The Great Gatsby is all about not expressing himself. It's all what is not said because they're socially immature and unable to really express what's going on and talk about the affair or how they feel about people who are poor or the death of Gatsby, even things like that. And it's just, I think that the MCU has done a very good job of doing most of it. But I think sometimes there's other places where they have to just be, now that they've been so successful, I think they can afford to be more judicious and not do so many shows, not do so many movies, not link it all. I really hope they don't. I mean, if Kevin Feige thinks his legacy is that it's all got to link, then you might as well just do a goddamn 22 episode a year show,
Yeah.
because it doesn't, or a soap opera, but that isn't what the genre is. That's not what the comic book world is. So, they're not even being true to the real sort of core of an adaptation idea there. So I don't know why we obsess so much over this. Oh, this one still deals with the TVA. Oh, you found a good way to do it. Oh, you're going to do it with these failed things here, as opposed to just whatever multi-Lokis are, stuff like that. Okay, for this one, that logic works. But I think if he's learned anything from the failure of the fifth tier, whatever it was, it's that not all of it's going to work.
Right.
Yeah. That's why, as we were saying, like, we have the land of the misfits. We have the void where all the characters that didn't work out or did work out originally are there now. It kind of relates to Deadpool in a way, and Wolverine, where they're like, hey, we didn't fit in. We're kind of misfits. I guess we're in the same boat as you. And it kind of works in that kind of way. It's a very unemotional, sort of similar way where Peter Parker had the other Peter Parkers in Spider-Man No Way Home when he needed them the most.
Right.
Yeah. So here we have these cameos that aren't underused. They're not murdered off right away. And it's something where I'm happy that they're not going to try to force these characters down my throat further down the road.
Yeah.
Could I see a Channing Tatum Gambit later? Maybe. I just think, but I mean, it's a maybe. He might pop up in another universe, but will he be like the main Gambit they cast? No.
The John Krasinski of this movie.
Yeah.
I love the fact that they did the pink sort of headdress thing, just like they did in the original X-Men animated series.
It looked goofy. It looked like, how's he get around to that?
See, that's what happens when you try to do the exact adaptation. It's like, that's why they did the black leather on the X-Men.
They looked like they stuffed him into that costume or something. I don't know. It was just,
well, you want to know something? It's really funny because I always think about this. It kind of looks like cosplay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think I might have seen better cosplay.
Exactly.
Cosplay, guys. Sorry, if you didn't know, I'm eating from the Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
It's got popcorn.
Now, was that available for the Critics Night, Mike?
No, it wasn't. I had to go.
So you had to go back there to dye it and get it?
Yeah, and it says,
did you see the movie twice?
By Deadpool. No. I just walked in there and said, hey, I just want to go to the concession and buy something.
A popcorn bucket.
Yeah, I want the popcorn bucket. I didn't get the Dune one. I want this one.
Went back into his car and cried while eating popcorn from Wolverine's mouth.
While pouring butter into it.
Oh, no. It's just... See, right there. They should have had Ryan Reynolds making some comment about that. Like, oh, and make sure you get your popcorn because you'll want to put all that butter in his mouth. Just like
that would have been a great extra bit at the end where he's actually...
That would have been really good.
I mean, they had
done two of them. Don't they do two now in every MCU movie?
Pretty much, yeah. Instead of two now, they just in this one they did that montage of.
You know what I wanted to see? I kept thinking they were going to reveal Blake Lively, and she was going to be complaining about the sweaty, chafing outfit because that's what I kept watching. In fact, I was watching Kimmel last night, and they're talking about it and all these. But I don't know how they walk around in those. Now, apparently it was a little bit colder when they were working on there, which is probably good because I don't know how do you breathe in those things.
You must have some really, really good underwear.
Yeah.
I always
but you think you're breaking in a new pair of shoes and they squeak? I mean, if you're moving your arm like to scratch your chin, doesn't it go like it's
that's where the sound department comes in and cuts that out.
Damn.
you see these superhero suits, you always wonder how do they go to the bathroom because there's never like a zipper in the front or
Right,
anything.
right.
They have to like dismantle the whole thing and then go. I mean, that was one of the things that Christian Bale told Ben Affleck when he ran into him in a clothing store. He said, "Just remember, you get a zipper in the front." You know,
ask for a zipper in the front.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
But I mean, it works in terms of like the fan service. It's like we always wanted to see Wolverine in the bright yellow, and it works in contrast with Deadpool's bright red. You know, I mean, it gets over the top when Wolverine has his mask on and all that, but we enjoy it for the stupid fan service that it is.
You know what I was
nice,
thinking?
Nice pool.
Yeah.
Nice, you know what they should have? You know what they should have given out? They should have given out hot dogs that had like the foot long, like the shape of the dog's tongue. Like they could have had that dog, and then you have the yellow mustard and ketchup with it, which are the Deadpool and the Wolverine colors.
You can't do ketchup in Chicago though.
Well, but they do a ketchup at the movie theater. You have ketchup for your hot dog at the movie theater if you want.
I know.
Yeah, I never follow that rule. I still put ketchup on things. I don't care.
I mean, look, as kids, you grew up eating ketchup and hot dogs, right?
Yeah. I mean, my nephew.
See, I did both. I did. We
Ketchup
put everything on it. We dragged it through the garden, as they called it. Relish, onions, sauerkraut, sometimes chili. It's like, how much shit do we need on this damn dog?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's advertising for this movie everywhere. Like everywhere I go, I was walking
that PR
around the
machine
grocery
is
store.
pretty darn good. Because I mean, those two of them are together everywhere. They're sitting down for every interview together, and they're hilarious.
They even did Hot Ones together.
Yeah. I can't remember who was the tougher one eating the wings.
I think it was Hugh. Yeah, I think it was
Hugh. Yeah. That would make
if
sense.
Hugh Jackman can still have that, dare I say, jacked body at 55, my God. I mean, it's like that's the thing is, if you come back and do another one, don't take your shirt off. You don't have to do that anymore, Hugh. You're 55. We worry about your hip joints.
Man, it's mind blowing.
I'm wondering if he's going to get some long-term health issues from that. Like, have you ever seen those? You ever seen those pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he stopped working out for a while?
Yeah.
And he was in the beach. It's like it's going to look like that. Yeah.
Still, even that doesn't look too bad.
No,
but I mean, there's fitness, but then like being that, I mean, if you've ever been to the beach and you see somebody who looks like Arnold or Hugh Jackman, it looks like you're in an alien planet.
Yeah.
People don't look like that in real life. It's just you see and go like, holy shit.
It's workout, but it's mainly diet. I mean, he was literally living off of tilapia and green beans.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was doing the Music Man while he was having to start building up. And he said he split his pants and all that. I can't imagine because that's a physical show. He's on stage almost the entire time.
Well, he's burning calories doing that show.
Exactly.
So then he had to gain them. So that's why he was eating 6,000 calories a day.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I apologize to all the chickens I've eaten over the years.
I mean, yeah, despite the height thing, he was the perfect Wolverine.
Oh, totally.
And I don't know, like, was he utilized the right way in this movie? Because, Logan was the perfect exit, as Jeff was saying earlier. But at the same time, it was funny, and the two worked because, you got Ryan Reynolds, who's the motor mouth, who likes to, bust everyone's chops, and then you got Wolverine, who's the alcoholic mess.
I love that scene in the diner. that scene in the diner at the Void where he's like, "You ever been tested for ADHD?"
Yeah.
Well, and it's very similar, and I don't mean to underline the point all the further, but it was very Butch and Sundance. If you remember Butch and Sundance, Redford gives a very stoic performance.
Yeah.
And Paul Newman is Mr. Chatty, Kathy is just always talking and telling you his schemes and all that.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much a buddy cop type movie, And yeah.
One guy's the crazy talkative guy, the other guy sort of the strong silent type, if you will.
Right. Yeah. And it's not out of character. That's pretty much how Logan has always
That's
been.
right. And it worked well here. It was funny.
Yeah, it works when Logan's actually allowed to swear and stuff like that. Because you see those PG-13 films, and you're like, that's not really Wolverine. And whenever he stabs someone, it's like in the shoulders or something like that.
It's a testament to Jackman too. I mean, the fact that when I was watching Kimmel last night with you, David, not together, but we could have almost done a What are you watching? Okay,
Yeah,
pause
yeah.
it. Okay.
Back in the
Start
day,
again.
that's how we did it, right? Are
I
you
know, that's
watching this?
right.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
I gotta check the TV.
Wait a
guide.
minute. I'll catch up with you. Okay, go. But you see Jackman, and he's the nicest guy. He's
Yeah.
smiling, he's laughing,
Yeah.
and when he's Wolverine, he's talking down here, and his
Mhm.
eyes become sort of focused.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like Hugh Jackman. He looks
Yeah.
like Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other times, like when you see him on stage and some other stuff, he did the same thing in Prisoners. I thought he was incredible in Prisoners
Oh,
because
yeah.
it was kind of
Yeah.
like a real Logan, justifiable in his fury, but he is so scary, and yet you don't get a touch of that when you see him. But he said, yeah, he taps into some rage that he's got deep down that he didn't know he had, because he isn't that guy most of the time at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of my other favorite movies that he's in is the Aronofsky movie, The Fountain.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Now
So
that
good.
one he's very sensitive in. Like
Yeah, it's
I
very
think
good.
the movie where Hugh Jackman shows much more of his delicate side.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crying scenes in it, maybe
Mhm.
too many crying scenes. Where like every other, like I get it, his wife's dying of cancer, it's very sad, but he's like crying in like every other like second in that
This
movie.
ain't the crying game.
Yeah, it's like the crying game.
there's no crying in sci-fi.
But like, yeah, Hugh Jackman, he can sing,
Yeah.
he can stay in shape, he can emote. I mean, as Jeff was saying earlier, Prisoners, I
It's
absolutely
like he's acting.
terrifying in
It's
that
crazy.
movie. Yeah,
Well, he is
he's
really good
actually
at-
someone. Because here's the difference between, because people are saying like, oh, Henry Cavill should be the next, Wolverine, and I'm like, no, because Henry Cavill doesn't really emote. He's very stoic.
Well, I
You
mean,
know?
also, do we really want, like, when Jackman was cast as Wolverine, nobody knew Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
Right.
And so that was the best thing. It was like Christopher Reeve as Superman. It's like,
Yeah.
we don't, like, I'm sorry, you're going to have Superman play Wolverine? I mean, come on. There's
More
there's
often than not,
out
in
there.
most of these kind of roles, or at least they're sort of the key roles like that, where they have to really get it right, it's good to not have preconceived notions of the actor's resume and kind of IMDb page, to your point, David, because it's like, yeah, we didn't know anything about Christopher Reeve. You're like, oh my God, he is Superman. Same with Jackman, a lot of other people when they do those kind of things.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, I mean that's why when you get an unknown actor, you don't have like all this information, all these performances to go on where you're like,
Mhm.
oh, he's just doing this again.
Like,
It's someone who's coming in completely fresh.
I mean, even though I knew Tom Holland from other roles and stuff,
Yeah.
this was Spider-Man was the great breakout role for him.
Mhm.
It's not like he had a series before this or another iconic character. And that's why it's so hard for some of those James Bond actors to, besides Roger
Mhm.
Moore or besides Sean Connery, to go on and do other stuff.
Yeah, I hope the next Bond is someone we don't know, because
It should be.
yeah,
It should be.
yeah, because
And they should go back to the future. They should do the original novels in the Cold War, because they've never been done as movies. They've only used the titles of most of them.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're good stories. And I think the spy game is relevant today, especially with the threat of the Soviet Union. They could go back. And I always hate that bullshit when they say, people don't want to go see period pieces. Bullshit. They watch period pieces all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
And everything on Apple Plus TV is a period piece. Everything that's a miniseries practically. If they watch The Queen's Gambit, which is a period piece that takes place in the 60s, and it's about chess, watching two people move little characters around the chessboard. Bridget, exactly. Please, I think you can do James Bond in the Cold War, when spying really mattered and you had to be secret about it. And the Cold War was a big deal. And like I said, it would be new to even the Dyed in the Wool Bond fans like us, because I've read the books, but I've never seen them put on the screen.
Right. Yeah, accurately.
Yeah, and actually have real world events tied to an actual war, makes it much more interesting than just James Bond's taking on another terrorist who wants to unleash a giant.
The smartest thing they did to this movie, the smartest thing they did to this movie is you're going to have no problem introducing another actor as Logan Wolverine, because it's going to be a different universe. When they introduce X-Men into the MCU, it's going to be its own thing. It's not going to be like, oh, this person doesn't look like Hugh Jackman, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's got to be totally different. Yet still, it can be totally different from the movie version, but it still has to have some type of loyalty to a version from the comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be smart too. I mean, I know everybody's going to want to see, oh, is it Taron Egerton, or there's been rumors about who's going to play
Right.
Wolverine and stuff like that. But I think they would be very smart if you'd say, like, okay, we've got to have Professor X,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe you have Storm, maybe you have Wolverine, but then put 4 other characters around him from the X-Men world who we haven't seen yet. And then they become novel. They become new characters and new actors who we love and want to see more of them, because that's the trouble with these sort of adaptations. And it's like, how many Jokers do we need? I mean, Joker's a great villain, maybe the best villain in any of the properties, but there's so many villains that they've never used even in DC. There's so many X-Men. It's like, please pick some of the other 50 that you have to choose from.
Yeah. I there's the problem with these pre-established properties is that everyone's expecting to see a certain character on screen. And if they don't see him on screen, then they get disappointed. They say, why isn't he there? Like, I wonder how Gambit would work, not Channing Tatum, but just Gambit in general would work in an X-Men movie, because he is hard to understand. That's kind of his character.
So it would be awesome. In some of those UK British movies, if they have like Cockney accents on there, they have subtitles.
Yeah.
Anytime Gambit speaks, you'd have like some subtitles. That would be awesome.
Yeah, let Guy Ritchie do it. He's used to putting people who need to be translated on film.
That would be awesome.
I'm about to say, like, it could be like a Guy Ritchie film, but but we could have different mutants that we haven't seen before, so we don't have just these pre-established sort of thoughts of, oh, what are they going to do when they bring him in? Oh, are they going to screw it up? I mean, there's a reason why X-Men '97, I think, works better than a lot of the movies.
Oh, sure.
Because X-Men is a cartoon, and it's meant to be a cartoon in a lot of ways. And when you make it live action, you can see the CGI in it. You can see a lot of that, the fakeness of some of the sets, and it doesn't engross you as much as a cartoon where it's kind of meant to be animated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to differentiate itself from all of the, I mean, Marvel had their own time travel stuff with Days of Future Past, and we went back time to First Class. So it's got to be able to differentiate itself from those movies and still be its own thing. So I don't envy the writer at all. So,
well, it's interesting though, because to your very point, those were not all hands on deck, and they weren't humongous things every time.
Right.
They didn't have to be epic. I mean, you think about First Class. Yeah, you had the end with the 2 warboats going in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Fantastic use of the time and everything else. But up until then, it was really kind of about developing these people in this special unit, and it was kind of small. And I think this movie shows that shame, or do I matter, is
Oh, you froze there.
No, I was so interested. It was something. I want to know what comes after is.
I feel for him. He's just frozen there.
Yeah, no, he got trapped in the void.
What happened there?
Yeah, I don't know. You were in the negative zone.
Yeah,
I know. I 3 things were just spinning. It was all black. Was I the only one?
You were the only one who was frozen.
Oh, that's weird. I stepped in the twilight zone. Maybe we should wrap this up, Mike, before I disappear completely. The aliens are at the door, and they're going to probe me.
Yeah, I think. All right. So
stop talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
So we got to get him out of there.
If you guys were to actually rate this out of like 4 stars, let's say, I use Guinnesses, but we can say stars. Who cares? How many would you give it, David?
I'm teetering on somewhere around 2.5 to 3 stars.
Oof. Okay. Yeah.
As a core idea of a movie, and its sort of execution, I would probably say 3 out of 4, but I would give it maybe an extra half a point because they could have fucked this up 17 ways till Sunday with all the screw ups that MCU has been doing. So I give them an extra half point just for like, wow, guys, you kind of got back on track because the last 4 or 5 TV series and 4 or 5 movies, you have been so off the track. So I'm going to grade a little on the curve.
Yeah. See, when I originally came out with my review, I gave it a 4, but I think I'm going to lean to a 3.5. I think some of it gets a little convoluted. Some of the fan service is a little too much, but it was fun throughout the whole film. The jokes landed. I thought it was one of my favorite comedies of the year. I mean, definitely those jabs at Disney and Fox were great, especially when Wolverine or Deadpool are fighting amongst the wreckage of the 20th Century Fox logo.
I mean, they even mentioned the proposal.
Yeah, exactly, which is great. That was one of the biggest laughs in the film.
Yeah.
You
know what? I will say this about Ryan Reynolds. I could be wrong on this, but he's probably perfect for Deadpool and for this kind of material because I think he is probably a student of the industry. And what I mean by that, the actors get immersed in like, well, I'm doing this and I'm so busy and I don't watch other stuff. People like Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Ryan Reynolds, I think they're watching shit. I think they love these shows. They know what, I think those kind of people do very well, especially if you're going to be making stuff that has to almost sort of address the problems that the MCU has. He's not just a passive observer. He knows.
I think both of them are, because there's no, without having watched the first Deadpool, Jackman wouldn't have agreed to this.
You're right.
He's like, I want to be a part of that. These characters would be great together. So yeah.
But also, I think he always just said yes to the character when they offered it to him.
I mean, he's the only actor who's played a superhero straight through. Everybody else has been recast.
This was his 10th appearance.
Superman, Batman.
Yeah, this was his 10th appearance as Wolfman. As Wolverine on the screen.
Yeah, well, he's like, we haven't seen him in a lot of. I haven't seen him in a lot of other stuff.
That's my one complaint. Is I think as talented as he is, he's now 55, and I just. My only thought is, as great as he is as Wolverine, I wish he would have done other material. Like he turned down the role of Billy Flynn in Chicago. He thought he was too young for the role. It's like, it's called makeup, Hugh. I don't know what you were thinking, but that would have been a great role for you.
Yeah, I'm sure he regrets it too.
He does. It's his biggest regret, he said. That's why he did Les Mis. It's like, yeah, you're supposed to play an old man in that too, but you're gonna do it anyway, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess we aren't across the board in love with it, but we do like it. It's effective. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank David Fowley from the David J. Fowley from Keeping It Real and Jeff York from The Establishing Shot. I'm Mike Crowley from You'll Probably Agree, also known as YPA Reviews.
And guys, we did agree with you, Mike.
Yeah, I think we mostly agreed. So people always say you should call it You'll Probably Not Agree. I'm like, well, maybe I could change it to You'll Hopefully Agree. That way it's a little more nuanced.
We like it just the way it is, Mike.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Hopefully you probably agreed with us. Let us know what you thought of all the spoilery, crazy stuff that happened in the movie. Thank you guys so much again. And until then, I'll just have some popcorn from Wolverine's Mouth.
Oh, boy.
And enjoy your
movie. Sure, use some Purell on your hands after that.